This is IBM Museum. Hello. While I still had the Skycam set up, I wanted to go through just a few more of the Mul 25s that I have before moving on to other topics and adjusting the camera. And one of those camera moves will be for showing a side shot of this screen angle adjustment. This is the position when the unit is on a desk to where an adult that sits higher has their eyes a little bit higher as they sit in the chair. And the screen is angled up more. There's a first position that would angle the screen lower for someone that's more viewing that screen from the middle, or like a teenager or someone that's shorter than an adult. And then there's a second position to where that adjusts that screen angle for a child viewing the screen, someone that sits lower in the chair. And once this goes to a third position, it releases the catch, so it freewheels from there. But I'll show that on the side view and how the adjustment is made on the Mul 25 to get that angle and make it so the system it's very sensitive to that position. If you lift the back, and of course that is released, then it just drops the back of the unit to the desk. So I'll show how that can be done properly. And this is a different Mul 25 SX than what I had up here previously. As you can see, I've got some of the back brackets removed. This location here, that's for that third, considered a reverse slot that's on the Mul 25 SX. The earlier Muls of the 25 do not have that reverse slot. Just an extra 16-bit slot for an ISA adapter. In this case, IBM had this for only two different adapters were the ones that were designed for going into this location on the 25SX. And both those adapters come from the EduQuest series. It's a little bit larger than the Mul 25. They started to produce those. It's an EduQuest units are an all-in-one unit, just like the Mul 25 is, but bigger. And IBM had the network interfaces that would go on the EduQuest series that also would fit on the 25SX. There's either an Ethernet adapter or token ring adapter that effectively fits in that position and has the network connections that come out of that. And I do have another unit with the Ethernet board in there. I'll show how those connections appear, that normal bracket for when that adapter is in place. But let's go ahead and open up this unit as well. I've already got the screws removed, of course, and just spinning that down. And in this case, I intended this unit, which I got before that K unit that I demonstrated previously was picked up with the nice extra memory and things like that. But the upgrade I planned for this, and you can see it doesn't have any floppy diskette drive or a hard drive in this unit right now. But I went through, I did add, with this being the L submodel for the 25SX, it doesn't have the some of the memory chips on board. This just has a one megabyte of planar memory in this case. Doesn't have the chips across that vacant SIM position for a socket being here as well. I've not seen a 25SX that has that SIM socket populated. They always just have the SAR pads. And for the K model, they have the memory chips across where that socket would be, and do have more chips over here to make it 4 megabyte. Of course, I've already gone through and I've added an 8 megabyte SIM, and this is that double-sided SIM where it does have chips on the back, and I've got that down in position that's just, of course, barely held in there as it is, or that the chips on the backside come real close to where that where the SIM socket is in place. And thankfully on the 25SX, you have the metal latches on the side of the SIM sockets and not the plastic ones that can break off. So there may be a little bit of tension in there with the SIM being in place, but it fits, and it's not hurting anything in that position. The main thing that's noticeable here, of course, besides that opening for where that network adapter would have its ports being in this reverse slot. And it's considered a reverse slot because the component side is facing down. The adapter has gone through, since it's flipped on the other side. The what is normally the component side is facing down, and then you have what's considered the wiring side, or where there's not any or a minimal amount of components on that reverse side of the adapter. And we're going to go ahead and pop this out. This is actually I picked up a few of these years ago, and it's normally an Ide adapter for a system that didn't have any planar IDE. Back when you had the IBM clones, that IDE was just getting introduced, or you had a conventional motherboard that didn't have an IDE connection on that motherboard. And in this case, they've gone through and masked out just for the basic function of those the IDE connections for a hard drive, floppy drive connection. And they've put that label over it because all this card does is it has a ROM BIOS extension that makes the system recognize the LBA drives, a drive that's above 512 megabytes, going up to, you can get it easily get this to recognize that the 2 gigabyte or 4 gigabyte drive in this case, and still use the planar IDE connection. All it does is it tells the system how to address those larger hard drives. And what I intended this for is it also can make it to where you can use those compact flash adapters from the IDE connection, and the ability to run like a 2 gigabyte compact flash. Most of the time that you see those adapters, that they're on the separate board for adding that functionality to an older system, you have a slot on the back of the bracket that those systems have as a way to extract the card out of the system or change cards on the system quickly without having to open it up. In this case, I'm going to have that out of this opening here to where I can pull that compact flash card. I'll have an assembly that'll come off this planar IDE connection and go on this board. I'll probably just adapt it, have some wiring on there to the compact flash. And I also intend with this, this looks like it had a place for an external connector of that IDE, and IDE by design can't have that much cable length to a drive. I mean, the internal cables were 18 inches at most. It's not a system, especially when the drives got faster and higher capacity, that you could have a very long cable length with that. But I'm also planning with the miniaturized connector to see if I can connect up some sort of CD-ROM drive externally. And it won't be a very long cable run for that as well. Who knows? I could have that in the case with the by adjusting the bezels up front a little bit as well, since this doesn't have it won't have a hard drive in it, that'll have that compact flash adapter in there. But that's one of the things that's possible with the 25SX, since it has the planar IDE and has that nice port, has this third slot as a location for that adapter. And of course, that ROM BIOS extension, that could be reduced in size as well. I'm just going through and misusing the whole adapter since it has that ROM BIOS extension chip on it for my purposes of doing what I need to do. And I'll go through and close this unit back up before we put the next one up and work through a couple more units to show them off as well. Now this particular unit, that's why I wanted to cover that in that earlier video of these flaps have been out of shape through time. There's some, not necessarily scoring, but there's some marks of that, of these tabs going in place. And this unit is about the most difficult 25 I have to close these up. But you'll encounter mold 25s like this that'll have those flaps that have just gotten out of position. Let me go through. Okay, I think I have it there. And that drops down. So that unit is closed. We'll set this off to the side and bring the next one up. So yet another 25SX, and here is that Ethernet adapter that's in this unit that has the RJ45 and the known as the 10 base T, and then the 10 base 2 connection, the BNC connector. Both those adapters perfectly come out. I think for the token ring adapter, I think it just has the DB9 token ring connection, doesn't have the later RJ45 style connection for token that token ring had. Some of the later boards had. I'll open up this unit just to kind of show what that Ethernet adapter looks like on the inside of it in the reverse slot. And I'll also answer the question once I have the other unit up here as well, and that's going to be, I think, just a regular 8086 based CPU unit that I'll show from there for that unit, just to show some of the differences. And as you can see in this case, for that reverse slot, IBM actually put the components on this side. So this adapter would not even necessarily function in a regular system, a regular ISA slot. Just the EduQuest series and the 25SX is what these adapters were designed for. Now there is an audio card as well, because the EduQuest, they being a slightly larger unit, they actually had 3 ISA slots on this side, and then they had 2 reverse slots on this side. And we'll get looking at EduQuest systems that I have later on. The EduQuest, it's interesting that the model numbers there, the number is spelled out. So a 40, EduQuest 40 is not the number of 40. It's actually spelled out on the badge of the unit as capital F, lowercase ORTY. And just one of those little pieces of trivia basically for the EduQuest series. And I don't know why they did it that way. So this is pretty much as it came. I don't think I've modified this unit a whole bunch. We see the retainer for that power supply cable and video connection, monitor connection has come unstuck basically from underneath there. But we can identify pretty much everything else. This, and that looks like, I'll have to look. That's probably another 8 megabyte board. Either I or someone else stuck it in, and it's dual-sided once again. So those SIMs do fit in there, but it is a very tight fit, as I was demonstrating in that prior video as well. And then this does have the key lock wire in there as well to the front panel. And I can probably also go over one of the last areas of the Model 25. I'll go for this time in the coverage is maybe I can go over a little bit on showing how to, if you have a locked Model 25, and how you would get that open. Because when that key lock, that latch is locked, it prevents this tray from dropping in this way. And there's just a little bit of getting at the locking mechanism. If you don't, have access or have a locksmith on call, as a way to unlatch the unit and to get inside. And thankfully, most of the Model 25s are not. They don't have that lock, but sometimes you will encounter that. And this does have a hard drive in there from the connection, and then and that's got the flap again. So this may be another one of those 2.88 megabyte drives, and this may be a model that I've worked with or changed out the drive, because from the factory they only came with the 1.44 megabyte diskette drives. They did not have the 2.88 megabyte drives, even though they support them. We quickly determined that just because of the chipset that's on the these planers, that we knew that that floppy drive controller would support having a 2.88 megabyte diskette drive in them. And so that's just basically ins and outs of that system. Just yet another 25SX that I do have around. And again, we get into where closing the unit is going to be a little bit of a challenge again, to make sure that we get those tabs and get that to latch in place. But I'll go through and I'll seal this system up and bring out another Model 25. Okay, another Model 25 up on the bench. And as I go through and open this up, I can give a little bit of a rundown on this unit as well. And I think one of the questions of somebody watching my videos is going to say, they're going to ask, how did you get so many Model 25s? And especially for the 25SX models that were only released to educational environments, to schools. And the answer to that is, a couple decades back, my local school system had a closed bid auction. Among the items was a bunch of Model 25s, and then a server that was included with them, a PS2 Model 95. And I came to find out that that's what my exposure was to the IBM iClass system, and that's the IBM Classroom LAN administration system. And that's just an environment that IBM set up for schools, that from a server that was running NetWare, they could have where the kids came into the computer lab or to the location where they'd be on computers, and all they would have to do is power up the Model 25, and it would boot up over a network connection, would not even have a local hard drive on it. Would still have the floppy drive on there just because that was one of the default items that IBM had, but would not have any hard drive interface that was local to the Model 25. And that the kids were able to boot up and do their computer work in that fashion for that time frame. And we're talking about probably the mid, maybe even starting in the early 90s, up until these systems started to be sold off from the schools around the year 2000, or a couple years before, depending. I think when I got mine, it was just about a couple decades ago. And that's where most of my systems came from. The Model 25K that I demonstrated and ran the SIT system information utility on. I actually purchased that one. That was the last unit I've purchased. I found an eBay auction, and I got that mainly for just because it was that K model. I recognized that, and also that it had some particular software that I had in my teaser a little bit earlier, and we'll demonstrate a little bit later of that user interface is on that system. It's a little bit unique in that regard. Now, this is just an 8086 based CPU system, and I did go through and upgrade a lot of these base units to the V.30. Excuse me, I don't know why I put the dot in there. V30 NEC V30 CPUs, and that gives it's just a higher optimized CPU than the 8086 was. Runs some different opcodes, and there are some features that it can add when you put that on a Model 25 or 30, the original versions of those models. Now, we'll see a little bit of what this connection does on the inside, and normally this area is blocked out. This is a spot for a DB15 I haven't seen an adapter that's otherwise been in there, or a connection that's in this location, just that it turned out to be a little bit convenient for the connection I have wired in. You'll see why I have that wired in a little bit. And this actually has an AST 6-pack. It's an adapter that was with IO ports and things like that. It's only the serial port here externally. It has headers on the adapter for going to other external connections. But I think the main thing that in this case that was they're looking for is that adds the real-time clock onto the Model 25. And of course you have to run drivers, because the PS2 Model 25 is the original Model 25 was unique that it was the only PS2 that didn't have a hardware real-time clock on it. And really, when you go through and you talk about the environment such as iClass and things that the Model 25 was used for later on, that real-time clock in hardware doesn't really matter, because the systems, when they're boot over the network, they're all have the correct time and date and all that set as well. And I've gone through and I've had earlier videos on doing that, what's called Ripple, remote initial program load, that can be viewed for part of that process. And I'll undoubtedly get into that in later videos, just to show that a little bit more details of what goes on with that, including the server that runs Network 3.1 and some of the functions there of how that's set up. And then there's also the the 4869-001 adapter that's in here for connecting up that 360 KB external drive. And this adapter is really common on the Model 30s. This is the only Model 25 I've seen with an adapter like this, and this is just for running that external diskette drive. Now, this system is actually, with the one exception I'll go over in a moment, was unmodified. I've only done the one modification here that I'll describe. These adapters were already in place, and I don't think that this unit came from the school auction lot as well, because it has some proprietary IBM software on there for personnel management that's regarded as internal IBM use. And of course, I've not gotten into that software. There doesn't look to be any personal details or anything like that. I do need to bring up that, and this is kind of for the times that when I did get the school auction lot and I fired up the server for that system. I was mainly interested in the server at that time. I didn't really look over my Mul 25s, but I found the password to get into the system was simply password. And so I was able to get in there, and there were some details on school children and things like that for them being in school. Nothing more than really a name and not much other details there. But of course, I went through and deleted that information. I wasn't interested in that at all. All I wanted to do is get into the system and run the administration of that I-class system. I was grateful that that wasn't wiped from the hard drive, but I needed to wipe the user accounts that were on there for the kids from that system. Now, the only modification I've done, and this is considered a Type 1 planer for the original Mul 25, in that the main distinction of that is that it has the power connection for the this connection is very close to the edge of this planer. In the Type 2 Muls, they move that power connection back, and it's over here. And some of the components are rearranged in that regard. The main connections of the hard drive and floppy drive connections underneath are in the same positions, video connector, but just some of the other components like the CPU and stuff like that are moved. The CPU in this case is, I believe, under these adapters, and then the socket for the 8087. And I did find an 8087 on this unit as well. And the interesting thing was, if it was done internally by IBM, that 8087 did not have a speed rating on it. It looked like it was for a slower system than the 8 megahertz here. And of course, it looks like it ran without any problems, but somebody had put that coprocessor in there that was running at, it looked like it was running at a higher rate than what was intended. Now, getting to the modification that I've done, and there's another video out there on YouTube, and I'll give a link to it in this in the description section of this video, to Hakimon Mike, that he has one of these adapters on his Type 1 Mul 25 as well, and I sent him one of these modules. I retained a few, and the reason I went through and retained them was for this takes that internal video connection and duplicates it through this module to an external connection. And so I have an external connection for the MCGA video that's on this Mul 25. And the original Mul 30s and Mul 25s have that MCGA video rather than VGA video. And Hakimon Mike has really gone the extra mile in explaining that in much more detail than I ever could. And with that link that I'll provide, it's very worthwhile looking over the videos that he has up on his Mul 25 and what he does with that. Very interesting stuff in looking at the video. And this is just, it gives that nicety that I'm able to capture video for the YouTube channel and other things of what would be normally displayed on the screen. And with the K model of that 25SX, I'm able to do that. And then I'll have also a Mul 25 286 that's set up with the same module that I get the external video. And that's just because the Mul 25s being that all-in-one unit with the integrated screen, I wanted a way that I can get video that I can capture out of that rather than setting up a camera in front of the screen and gain it that way. Just a way to display what I'm doing on the units with that screen out there to be viewed. Now, this may have the original 720 KB drive. I'll have to check. And then, like I say, that hard drive, and that's just probably like a little 40 megabyte hard drive. And I don't know why IBM had the instance of having that internal software on this level machine, on a MAL 25. Just is not all that powerful of PS2. There could have been other systems that they could have set up that IBM employee with for the personnel management. So right before we close up this screen, I do want to explain that having this original MAL 25 out, that the 8086 CPU based version was the only MAL that had a selection to where it could be since it's all in one, to where it could be a monochrome screen or a color screen. And for the later MAL 25s, they all had color screens from there. And of course, the higher VGA standard, or even SVGA with the 25SX. But the badges of the color units, and I think most of my units are color. Hekima Mike has a monochrome unit that he's gone through and works with. But I've encountered the color units for some reason. I mean, I know that probably there's a lot of these were produced in the monochrome versions, which is something I wanted to bring up as a for the original MAL 25s. And as I say, on the badge, normally for the color units, you have 3 colored dots. I can probably show that in a clip, or take a picture of that to feature in the video as well, just to show what those badges look like, to know, for someone seeing a MAL 25 and trying to base on whether it's a color or monochrome unit. So let's go through and close this unit up, and then I'll look at that screen adjustment thing from a side view. Is the next video portion I want to bring up. And being that I did go over and cover the back plate for when I had the 25SX up here, and showed the original this original plate of what would normally be on a MAL 25, and this connection here, it's kind of the only PC I've ever seen out there with that headphone connection, a full 1/4-inch headphone connection, the old style headphones that the kids could go through and plug in their headphones so they could go through and use the computer without really disturbing other students or the teacher. They'd be basically plugged in as they ran through their computer programs, their assignments they were supposed to do. And yes, in that school auction lot, I did get a whole bunch of those old school headphones that are rather average or mediocre quality for that time frame, but it was enough for the kids to use on these systems. Okay, and with the camera moved to the side shot, we can show that screen angle adjustment. This is with it flat against that the top of the desk or surface it's sitting on for like an adult. And as we lift, we have the one click. That is for that medium area of the screen angle. Someone that sits a little bit lower in the seat has their eyes at a lower level. We can go up for the second click, and that's the lowest screen angle. And as you see, the front of the screen, that's just about at a right angle to the, not quite to the top of the desk. And then I'm using the handle. There's an inset on the back of the MAL 25, And that's why I'm putting in to lift up. And you want to be careful too, because as I say, you go to the third click, and from there, that releases the catch. It can't be put any higher. 1, 2, and 3 releases the catch to drop it back down. So there's only those 3 positions that screen angle adjustment is capable of. So that completes this video. And if you please put any comments that you may have in place, I'll include links in the description of the video. And as always, this is IBM Museum. Thank you.